The night Westpoint went dark, and the man they all ignored saved it. The desert night was merciless. Sand hissed in the wind like whispers of ghosts. A small unit of U.S. Special Operations Forces crouched behind a broken stone wall, their breathing shallow, their eyes scanning the dark horizon. At the front, a man knelt, binoculars pressed to his eyes. He didn't flinch at the distant crack of gunfire or the occasional glint of enemy movement. His name was Commander Edward Ray Donovan, codename Spectre. 2 tangos northwest approach, staggered movement. They're not flanking, they're testing. His voice was calm, barely a whisper, but every man around him listened like it was gospel. Behind him, then Captain Whitmore gave a small nod. "You sure?" "I'm never sure," Donovan replied, lowering the binoculars, "but I'm ready." 10 minutes later, they moved silent, coordinated, surgical. No errors, no wasted steps. The mission that night saved the lives of over a dozen Allied personnel and uncovered a planned ambush. Donovan's report would later form the basis of a revised threat response manual, but he never put his name on the front page. He simply said, good judgment should speak louder than a signature. He disappeared from active duty 3 months later, and no one heard from him again. It was 2:17 in the morning. The rain hadn't stopped in hours. It wasn't loud rain, but the kind that soaked everything quietly, the kind that filled silence with unease. Inside the walls of Westpoint Military Academy, a few cadets turned in their bunks. Others wiped steam from their windows to check the sky. A lightning flash, then darkness. Every light, monitor, and camera feed in the academy flickered, then failed. Screens blinked. Radios buzzed into static. Electronic locks clicked once, then froze. Sensors died. Generators didn't respond. In seconds, the nation's most secure officer training ground was blind, deaf, powerless. Cadets assumed it was a drill. Staff thought it was weather. Only one man knew better. From the south gate, a figure emerged, slowly but without hesitation. Rain streaked down his weathered security jacket, a black notebook under one arm, a flashlight in the other. He didn't look up. He didn't shout. He just walked. His name on the books was Raymond, but years ago his name had been Donovan, and he was walking towards something he had seen coming weeks in advance. They would all say later, no one could have predicted this, but Raymond did. He always did. Raymond moved with purpose along the east edge of the perimeter just beyond where the cameras used to watch, past the utility sheds, past the overgrown drainage ditch cadets joked about. He didn't need a map. He had memorized every inch of this route. Kneeling slowly, he pressed his hand into the mud. Footprints, deep, precise, heavy enough to know someone had waited in place. 2 pairs, standard combat spacing, civilian boots. He didn't call it in. The comms were down, and even if they weren't, no one would have believed him. Not yet. He flipped open his notebook, shielded the page from the rain. 2:18 a.m. Southeast quadrant, perimeter compromised. 2 subjects, pattern, deliberate, possible repeat breach. He stood, scanned the tree line with a small penlight, not to spot targets, but to see their absence. Sometimes the danger isn't what you see, it's what's missing. The nose, the wind, the pattern. Tonight the pattern was broken. He turned west, not to chase, but to track, to confirm, to prepare, because it wasn't about catching them tonight. It was about knowing when they would return, and how. The first time Raymond walked through the gates of Westpoint, nobody noticed. He wore no medals, no decorations, just a standard issue jacket and a small patch that security assumed was out of regulation. In fact, the patch was a custom insignia, one given only to Blackout, Command and Elite classified unit. But no one recognized it. No one asked. Raymond liked it that way. He was given South Gate duty, a low-profile post, ideal for someone with his skills, and perfect for someone the command staff didn't want to draw attention to. Cadets saw him every day, standing there, clipboard in hand, thermos in the other. Some called him Old Man Gate. Others joked he was part of the landscaping crew. To them, he was a ghost in khaki, but ghosts are only invisible to those who don't know how to look. Raymond saw everything, not just the glitches in the keypad, not just the camera lag, but the people. How Blake barked orders without watching who hesitated. How cadets cut corners when they thought no one was watching. How guards passed each other without cross-checking their zones. And he logged it every day, every shift, not because he had to, because he remembered what happened the last time people ignored the signs. Lieutenant Daniel Blake believed in clarity, in speed, in efficiency. His leadership style was unmistakable, commanding, loud, absolute. He didn't just walk through Westpoint, he marched. He had been featured in the Academy's quarterly review twice, praised for his directness, his discipline, his aggressive tactics. To cadets, he was the ideal to model after. Clean lines, iron creases, loud orders. To staff, he was useful. To Raymond, he was dangerous, not because Blake lacked talent, but because he lacked hesitation. In war, hesitation can kill, but so can overconfidence, and Blake brimmed with it. He never noticed the quiet patterns that change from day to day, never noticed which cadets didn't meet his eyes after being yelled at, never noticed how sensor for B lagged half a second behind for A. But Raymond noticed. One morning as Blake walked past the south gate, he paused. "You still writing down weather reports, old man?" Raymond didn't look up. "Patterns, not weather." Blake chuckled. "We have satellites for that now. I'm sure even you've heard of those." Raymond closed his notebook. "Satellites don't see everything." Blake smirked, gave him a mock salute, and moved on. The cadets who trailed behind laughed. But Sarah didn't. Cadet Sarah Porter had always felt like an outsider. Maybe it was because she asked too many questions, or because she listened more than she spoke, or maybe it was because she noticed things others ignored. On her first day, soaked by a surprise rainstorm, she passed the south gate and instinctively saluted the guard. Raymond returned it with no hesitation, no smile, no condescension, just respect. She'd grown up military. Her father taught her to salute integrity, not just insignia. She didn't expect to find it in a gatekeeper, but as the weeks passed, she watched. Raymond never checked his watch. Yet he knew when the flag should rise. He never interrupted conversations, but somehow always heard what mattered. One afternoon, she lingered by the gate longer than usual, watched as Raymond opened a keypad panel and adjusted a small circuit. "No alert?" she asked. "Not yet," he said. She looked confused. "So it's broken?" "Not broken," Raymond replied. "But the lag is growing." He noted something in his book, a single line. Sarah began carrying her own notebook that night, not because she wanted to be like him, but because for the first time she realized how much she wasn't seeing. There was a time when Raymond's black notebook was just that, a notebook, at least to everyone else. To Raymond, it was his memory, his mirror, his method. Inside were entries that read more like code than journal. 5:31. Keypad delay, South Gate. 1. 8 South Lag. 6:17. Patrol shift late. No visual of Cadet Mason. 6:32. Camera to a minor flicker. 0:3 South interruption. Sarah saw him writing once and asked, "You ever go back and read all that?" "Every week," Raymond said. "If you don't track the drift, you don't see the pattern." His handwriting was clean, slanted, each line formed with patience, the kind that came from discipline, not boredom. Most cadets thought he was scribbling nonsense. Blake once joked he was drawing fantasy football plays, but Sarah knew better. One morning, she got curious and arrived at the gate 30 minutes early. Raymond was already there. He was flipping back through old pages, comparing diagrams, updating something from memory. She asked, "What if you're wrong?" Raymond didn't flinch. "Then I'll be wrong with detail." That week, Sarah began tracking her own shifts. She documented her run routes, her interactions, even Blake's morning behavior. She was no longer observing Raymond. She was learning from him. And Raymond, he never once told her she was doing it right. He didn't need to, because her questions had changed, and questions always reveal growth. It began with a flicker. Camera SE6, watching over the southeast quadrant, skipped a single frame, half a second. Most wouldn't catch it, but Raymond wasn't most. He was reviewing last week's entries, sipping lukewarm coffee, when the monitor blinked. A flick, then grainy feed, then normal. He paused, rewound, frame by frame, at 0.25 speed. He saw it, not a malfunction, a shimmer like heat rising off pavement, but it was for 48 a.m., and the ground was soaked from overnight rain. He made no dramatic gesture, no alert, no panic. He simply wrote, "For 48, SE6 flicker, irregular, investigate anomaly." Sarah arrived moments later, hair damp from morning PT. Raymond was still staring at the screen. "What is it?" she asked. A hesitation. He replied, "You think it's sabotage. I think it's a pattern. Just hasn't finished speaking yet." He wrote a summary and printed a single hard copy, folded it, slipped it into Officer Reeves' mailbox. The slip was never logged. He knew it wouldn't be, but the next day he checked SE6 again, and it blinked once more, half a second longer. Sarah started watching the camera feeds with him in the evenings. 2 chairs, 2 notebooks, 2 minds trying to solve a riddle only one of them truly understood. But Sarah was learning the language, and Raymond, he was no longer watching alone. A week before the blackout, the keypad at the east gate stuttered again. Raymond stood in the rain, watching the cursor delay his confirmation by nearly 3 seconds. He adjusted the panel, manually resetting the bypass and reconfiguring the delay. It wasn't the first time. He logged the issue, then typed a short field note. Keypad 3. 2.7 seconds delay. Confirmed repeat lag. Likely external interference. Recommend sweep. Then he printed it, folded it, slid it under the corner of Lieutenant Blake's inbox. It was never acknowledged. The next morning, Blake passed by the south gate during his usual inspection circuit. Raymond stood as he always did, posture like a stone statue, eyes flicking from screen to tree line. "You still filing papers in the dark?" Blake said, glancing down at the black notebook. We've got automated logs for that. Automation skips patterns when it trusts input blindly, Raymond replied. Blake shook his head and walked off, muttering something about paranoid dinosaurs. Sarah heard the exchange. Later that day, she timed the gate's delay herself to 0.8 seconds. She recorded it, drew a diagram, wrote a note. Intermittent delays can cascade. One failure won't cost us 5 might. Raymond saw her page, said nothing, just gave a small nod. That night, a second shimmer appeared on camera SE6, and this time it left a faint outline, 2 silhouettes in perfect formation. Raymond circled the outline in red ink. They're not testing anymore, he wrote. They're timing us. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of evening where clouds hung low and the campus buzzed with quiet routine. Cadets were winding down from drills. Officers gathered for the weekly debrief. Lights blinked rhythmically across the main compound. And in the southeast quadrant, the shadows moved across the blind spot near the old munitions storage. Raymond saw it as it unfolded. Live feed. Camera SE6. Frame 114. He leaned forward, one figure crouched, the other covered. Tactical, trained. They didn't break pace. They moved with precision, not like vandals or thrill-seekers, like operators. Raymond hit record, annotated the timestamp, jotted angles and formation spacing. He printed the frame. Then he did something no one expected. He drew a map, not digital, not scanned, hand-drawn on grid paper, annotated with pen. Red lines for sensor blind spots, blue lines for patrol shift gaps, green circles around keypad lags. At the bottom, one phrase: systemic vulnerabilities aligned, expected breach route confirmed. He placed the map on Lieutenant Blake's desk. No cover sheet, no explanation, just truth. The next morning it was gone. Blake made no mention of it, but cadets whispered. Sarah saw a crumpled corner sticking from the recycling bin. She retrieved it and folded it and froze. Every detail Raymond had predicted matched. She made 3 copies, gave one to Reeves, kept one, tucked the third behind her bunk locker. The phrase haunted her. Expected breach route confirmed. That night she didn't sleep. Neither did Raymond, because the test phase was over, and next time it would be real. The storm didn't announce itself. It didn't roll in with thunder or lightning. It simply arrived at 2:16 a.m. The air change, the kind of change you feel in your teeth before a cold front, a weight in the atmosphere, a silence that seemed to hum. At 2:17, everything failed. Lights gone, cameras dead, radios static, locks frozen. The entire campus blinked into darkness. Sarah sat upright in her bunk, her instincts screaming. The hallway was pitch black. No emergency lights, no beacons, just the soft sound of rain tapping on windows. Lieutenant Blake's voice boomed seconds later. All cadets stay in your quarters. This is likely a system reboot. It wasn't. Raymond had been standing at the gate, waiting, not because he knew the exact minute it would happen, but because he had narrowed it down to a window. He clicked on his manual flashlight, checked his watch to 17. Total blackout. External triggers suspected. Power grid failure synchronized with perimeter lapse. He moved, not rushed, not panicked, purposeful, across the south quad, past the generator building, toward the culvert, where the breaches had always begun. The rain soaked his shoulders. His boots dug into the wet earth, and there just beyond the tree line were prints. Fresh, deep deep, confirming everything. 2 intruders, moving like clockwork. Inside the control building, Lieutenant Blake scrambled, shouting at tech teams to bring the systems back online. Cadets huddled near exits, unsure if this was still a simulation. Sarah ignored orders. She slipped out the back, found Raymond's path, followed it. She didn't know what she was hoping to find, but when she saw the beam of his flashlight ahead steady, unwavering, she ran to him. He didn't turn. "Still think it's nothing?" he asked quietly. "No," she whispered. He handed her the notebook. It was already opened to the right page. Projected breach window. 2:15 to 20. Predicted blackout. Local trigger with line cut. South culvert. She looked at him, stunned. "You wrote this 2 weeks ago." Raymond nodded. "The difference between paranoia and preparation," he said, "is timing." By 2:34 a.m., the emergency generator sputtered back to life. Lights returned slowly, flickering like hesitant memories. Monitors rebooted, displaying static before showing live feeds again. But it was too late. The intruders were gone. No alarms, no confrontations, just 2 deactivated sensors and a cracked latch near the southeast quadrant. Raymond and Sarah returned to the command center, soaked, silent, carrying the notebook like a war log. Lieutenant Blake spun toward them. "Where the hell have you been?" he barked. This was a critical malfunction. All hands were ordered to. Raymond laid the notebook on the table, open to the breach page. Blake glanced down, smirking. "This again?" he scoffed. "You really think you predicted a blackout?" Raymond pointed to the diagram. Timing, location, failure patterns all confirmed. "I didn't predict it," he said. "I prepared for it." Blake's face flushed. He was about to retort when the door burst open. Aides stepped aside. A black sedan pulled up outside. General Whitmore entered, her uniform soaked from the storm. She walked past Blake without a glance and stopped in front of Raymond. She didn't salute. She didn't smile. She handed him a folder. Inside photos, field reports, operations logs. The first page showed a much younger Raymond than Commander Donovan standing beside her in Kandahar, Afghanistan. "You wrote our first breach doctrine," she said. Blake paled. "Wait, he's the reason this facility still stands," she snapped. "And you ignored every warning he gave." She turned to Raymond. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" Raymond looked up, calm, tired. "I did," he said. "They just stopped listening." She turned to the cadets and officers gathering near the door. "From now on," Whitmore said, "every cadet will read this man's logs. Every shift will begin with his final page." She placed the notebook in a seal case. Then she faced Blake. "You're relieved. Effective immediately. No ceremony, no shouts, just judgment." Raymond nodded once and walked out, past cadets who now stood straighter, past officers who no longer laughed, and for the first time since he arrived at Westpoint, they saluted first. Raymond didn't say goodbye. There was no final shift, no retirement notice, no cake or farewell lunch. One morning, the South Gate was simply unmanned. A fresh padlock hung from the control panel. A folded note sat on the desk. "The watch never ends. It just changes hands." Sarah stood in silence as she read it. Then she opened the control booth, changed into the jacket he had left behind, and picked up the notebook now encased behind clear laminate. She didn't speak. She just nodded at each cadet who passed by, and this time Every single one of them nodded back. The plaque outside now read, "Raymond Post in honor of steadfast watch." Years passed. New cadets came through the gates of Westpoint. They were told stories, some half-whispers, some with reverence. They heard about the blackout, the breach, the man with no rank. Some thought it was legend, until they met Lieutenant Porter. Sarah walked like Raymond used to, calm, measured. She checked every latch. She trained new watchmen herself, not in tactics, but in awareness. She never raised her voice, yet every cadet obeyed. One spring afternoon, a black SUV pulled to a slow stop outside the gate. A man in a long coat stepped out. He had gray in his beard now, a slight limp, but his eyes still clear, still watching. He left a box wrapped in canvas, labeled in black marker for the next one. Inside, a folded uniform, a set of old tools, a second black notebook, and a simple note: "Make it count. Be steady. Speak only when needed." They never saw him again, but West Point never forgot, because every day cadets walk the perimeter at dawn in silence, not because it's required, because it's tradition, and in that silence Raymond still watches, not from the gate, but from the legacy he left behind. Respect is earned in silence, daily.